Hello, and welcome to Socially Holistic Podcast. Socially Holistic helps coaches and holistic entrepreneurs and women in heart-centered businesses make sense of social media so they can build their own online network and get more clients. As a heart-centered business owner, you do amazing work. Holly's mission in life is to help you help more people. Help us help more women in business with a 5-star review of this podcast. Please leave one today over at iTunes. The more women who find out about this podcast, the more heart-centered businesses will be successful. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the Socially Holistic Podcast, episode 52. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm here with today's very special guest, Julieanne Steele from Unclutter Your Life. Julieanne is an organizer and declutterer. Welcome, Julieanne.
Thank you. Good morning, Holly.
I'm so excited to have you today because I've been wanting to share a decluttering expert on this podcast because I think it's such an important thing and I think it's something that so few people actually take the time to do. So very excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your background?
Okay. My business has developed through personal circumstances, and looking back, I would say it goes a long way back to when I first bought my own home, and I have a love of being comfortable in my home, so wanting to feel safe, calm, organised, and I love interiors. So far back as I can remember, I have loved making a home look beautiful and making it work for myself. And then as I started to have a family, I realised how important that was for my children. I have moved an awful lot. Some of them have been great, advantageous moves. Some have been very daunting. And one particular house move, when I relocated down to the West Country and then got divorced and relocated back, was a huge kind of downsizing move, which kind of made me reevaluate all of the things that I had. So moving home, I've been constantly decluttering and finding new homes for places and letting go of things. And yeah, that's kind of how my work evolved. And going back to when I was still at school, I was a child actress from the age of 10, and I was kind of thrust into the outward sort of superficial world of working, where everything on the outside, needs to look great when you're going up for auditions, and it very much became, I actually went introverted as opposed to extrovert from those early days into acting. Mm. And something that really sort of struck home to me was how sometimes things look good on the outside, but they don't feel good on the inside. Mm. And I relate that to my home and how when I come home, I want to feel that it is a haven and it's somewhere to retreat to and that it feels good. And it's not so much about living in this great, big, wonderful house, with a sweeping drive. And I have had those kind of houses because, during my marriage, it was a very affluent marriage. Mm-hmm. But actually, all of that kind of outside look of things was quite hard and quite expensive, well, very expensive to maintain. And it looks good, but it didn't feel good. Mm. So the kind of place where I'm at now is that I don't own my own home. I'm renting a house. It's one of the smallest homes that I've ever had, and I have the least amount of stuff that I've ever had. So it's been a journey. Yeah, it's for me to help people who are going through life changes when maybe they don't expect them, whether that's a career change or they may be made redundant, so that they're living with more financial restraints, or they've found themselves divorced and they've been forced to move home, or their life has been changing constantly, like how mine has, with having a bigger family and having to kind of make that work for everybody, and being clutter-free really helps that to happen smoothly for everybody. And it is a challenge because I have teenage children as well who are constantly they're materialistic. You know, they constantly want things. The kind of circles that they mix in, and society and advertising, consumerism is all about getting more and having more, which kind of, you know, is a constant challenge for me, because actually, you know, for me, it's more about the experiences, not the possessions. So it's about the time that we spend together as opposed to what we actually get or have or buy. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
I love that. How did you convert that kind of personal experience of having moved home so much and decluttering as you go? How did you get to the point where you turned that into a business?
Well, I think it was actually a moment of desperation that I became inspired. I think at one point I was in debt. I was very much in debt, and I thought, you know, how am I ever going to get out of this situation? I felt like I was drowning in not just debt, but in a sea of stuff around me. And I thought there must be lots of other women that feel like this post-divorce. And I actually woke up in the middle of the night and thought, you know, I need somebody like me, what I'm planning to do, to have helped me to get out of this situation, to feel freer and lighter. So that was about 3.5 years ago that I decided that I was going to develop a business whereby people could be accountable to me, women, particularly women, and I could give them the actual hands-on experience of how I did it. And it's a positive. Sometimes when people face losing things, it all seems negative. For me, it's been a positive experience. It's been uplifting. It's made me feel that I'm freer and lighter, and I can be more spontaneous. It's transformed my life and my home, and I wanted other people to know that is possible for them too.
I love that. I absolutely love that, because I think so many people look at, you know, getting rid of things and loss as being, you know, difficult and challenging, and they're afraid of it. And a lot of people are very afraid of letting go of things. I mean, both physically and emotionally. Emotionally
letting go is the key part of uncluttering. It's the harder, they go hand in hand, but it's the hand that often holds people back from actually being able to take that first step, but then also being able to maintain it. So once you have let go of something, it's about being able to move easily, transition into maybe things that are much more emotionally difficult. Recently, I worked with a lady who had lost her son, and she had an enormous amount of belongings from her son passing away. And, you know, it's very, very difficult because every single piece, memento and item that she'd kept had, she felt an energy attached to it which related to the passing of her son. So, but she wanted to make a start, but she was held back by her husband's feelings, and that maybe that as she was getting rid of things, she would be slowly erasing some of the memory from her son. So something like that is that situation requires a mentoring and an understanding of what kind of attachment we have to actual things, as opposed to the stuff that goes on in our head, which is not physical. You know, it's not something that actually takes up a space in our home. It takes up a space in our head, but yes, not physically a space in our home.
And how do you help guide people through this process of getting rid of the emotional attachment so that they can let go of physical things?
I think a lot of it's about listening and being able to empathise but not sympathise. And it can take quite a while by talking to somebody without them actually wanting to practically pay for a service like what I offer. Often it could be quite some time just by talking on the telephone and getting kind of a depth of how much stuff is there, and then once the client acclimatised to, I didn't realise that, you know, this could be clutter. it's quite a slow process before they're actually accountable in a practical sense, before I would actually hands-on remove things from a home or from their life. And some people start off by organising things first before they actually can let go. So they may have a period of weeks where they'll start to want things to be more organised and structured, and there to be less of it, but they're not actually willing to let go of it yet. So sometimes that's a process. So it's talking, and then often it's organising and making things kind of in an orderly way within the home, maybe in archive boxes or just kind of taken from maybe the room to another space. And then they realise, oh, actually, you know, I haven't visited the loft space where I've put things out of sight and out of mind for a year now, and I haven't missed those things. And so then that's the next sort of step. It's quite a long process. And often if people are forced to buy space, you know, space doesn't allow the client to keep their items if they're moving home and then downsizing, or if they're paying for storage and they can't afford to carry on, you know, storing things. Often, or if they start a new relationship and they start to amalgamate, you know, their new partner's things into the home. I teach people to think about taking things away as opposed to adding more storage or getting upsizing into a bigger space or buying furniture to accommodate items. So it's understanding that less is more.
Yeah, and I think that's something that can be so challenging for people who are so used to accumulating things over the years. So how do you work with people then? Do you have a series of kind of coaching and mentoring calls before you actually go into their home and work with them?
It depends how the client comes to me. Often, if they come to me through the website and they will say, I offer clients a 30-minute consultation on the telephone, no obligation to book me in to be accountable. And during that 30 minutes, I ask them a series of sort of like assessment questions, which kind of just gives me an idea of what the client wants. For example, if the client says to me, you know, I've got an office that is just overflowing with paperwork, you know, I don't know where to start. Following those 30 minutes, if the client is happy and we have a connection, I will then go on site to that client's house and make an on-site assessment. And if it's something in a practical sense, so there's no emotional mentoring that needs to take place, I will then write up a quote and give them an idea of how long it will take me to complete the project. And then they book me and I work hands-on, one-on-one with the client at home. If the client is not sure whether they want to have me in their home and it's such a private experience, they may talk to me several times on the telephone, and often they go away and they have a think, and there's a gap. And I've had a couple of clients where they have booked me for one day to kind of do a very kind of small, easy project at home to see how comfortable they feel, because that's a key relationship part of the work that I do, is that having somebody come into your home is a very private experience, and they don't know how they're going to feel until they've kind of there's a vulnerability about it until they've opened up to that actually happening. And one lady that happened with, and then she booked me, and I was there for 7 weeks.
Wow, so, that's a lot of decluttering.
and that was because she did feel that I was the right person to help her through the process, and we went through the whole house. Wow! But it was a one-day booking, and it just evolved on site, which often does happen because once people realise how much the energy shifts within the home and how better they feel, it literally does evolve from there. So that's fantastic if that happens.
And I think that's so important what you say about, you know, feeling that rapport with someone and understanding that the person that's going to come into your home to help you declutter is not going to judge you and is not going to criticize you. I mean, you're simply there to just help them get rid of the things, and you're not going to be, you know, criticizing them for having let this happen over the years.
I think it's two things. It's facilitating the person to know actually there is help out there. There are actually people that do the work that I do, which often, I come across people saying, oh my gosh, so is there actually somebody, an actual professional organiser? Is there any such thing? And how is it regulated? And obviously it's regulated through the Association of Professional Organisers and Declutterers, which is APDO. And then once they realise that, oh gosh, there actually is somebody that I can be accountable to. So I think the key, what's instrumental is when somebody realises that to be accountable actually makes it happen. Mm-hmm. So often, people think, I've been meaning to do that for such a long time, but they put it off, they procrastinate, and something they think more important comes along to take up that time. But when you know that, for example, I'm coming to you on this day, and we've set a time and we've looked at the project in hand and it's going to start. Often people, even if you mentor them, they don't do it on their own at home without the accountability factor.
I think with any type of coaching program or mentoring program, the accountability is such a huge, huge part of it, because it just makes sure that people get the stuff done that they want to do. Yeah, and decluttering is about, sifting through the stuff. That's the basis of it. It's, somebody being able to show you the method, because there's a method, there's like a right action that when I'm teaching somebody then how I do it in the process, they can go away after I've left and apply that same right action, that method, to every other part of the home. So, for example, it's I call it all of the R's. It's recognising clutter. It's realising that clutter exists. It's about removing the clutter from that space, which is very important, so that the space is then empty. And then it's about thinking, how am I going to reduce it? And once you realise that you can reduce it, it's what do I do with the remainder? How do I rehome that? Do I recycle it? Do I rehome it to a friend? Do I make a donation? Do I put it in the refuge dump? Do I literally put it in the rubbish? Mm-hmm. And then after that, you reassess what's left, and then you then can put that back into the space. So and that's when you can rejoice and you think, wow, So that kind of right action, it's about going through that process of all of the R's, mm-hmm. and knowing that there's a method and it's foolproof. And when you're accountable to somebody and they're there and they're saying, okay, like for example, if you're looking at a wardrobe consultation and it's like, okay, let's realise that we've got a wardrobe stuffed full of clothes and recognise that you only wear 20% of them. And then the next step is we say, okay, let's take everything out. Let's remove everything from this wardrobe. And now let's look and think, okay, how can we reduce this? We've got 15 pairs of black trousers and 2 pairs fitters that we really love, that are really flattering. Mm-hmm. So what do we do with, the other 13 pairs? Do they need repairing? Do they need going to the rehoming to a friend? Maybe they'll fit a friend. Are they torn? Do they need to go into the rubbish? So it's kind of that process. And often people don't do those things, or they get stuck halfway through, because they then, what sort of comes into their thought process is that, oh, but what if I need, what if I get bigger? What if these trousers, my fat trousers when I put on weight? Or what if, I spent so much money on that jacket, I feel guilty for getting rid of it, even though I don't wear it. So by having me there, the mentoring process kicks in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. That's fascinating. I love that. Now, I think the important thing to address here is that decluttering is not just about organizing and freeing up space. It's about the massive shifts that can happen as a result of doing this. So could you tell us a little bit about that, the kinds of changes that you've seen in your life and that your clients can expect to see in their lives after making this whole decluttering and organizing process?
Often clients feel much stronger, mm-hmm. and they have clarity. They make life-changing decisions because they feel rejuvenated, that all of the rubbish and all the dead wood and the driftwood has been cut loose, and they've got more time. They have less to maintain. They have often reduced their outgoings. And imagine moving from, a big house and realising, actually, I don't need a big house with a huge mortgage and ridiculous bills and all of this stuff that I'm dusting and polishing and maintaining and repairing and keeping that takes up all of my time and money and energy. So they feel much more energised because they have less stuff hanging around them to weight them down and root them, often doing things they don't want to be doing. And emotionally, if I'm mentoring people to give up emotional clutter, which is obligations and commitments, doing things for people that they don't really want to do, or saying yes to commitments that they don't actually want to agree to, which makes them feel resentful.
Mm-hmm.
So when you've got in your life the only things that you want to have in your life, whether that's emotionally or physically, you just have the enormous amount of energy, spare energy.
Yeah, I think that's so important. So how can someone know when it's time to get help with decluttering?
Often people, when they're stuck and they're in the same kind of cycle over and over again, that's an indication that they're stuck, their energy is stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So they're literally stuck in their body physically and because of their surroundings, their environment. So it may be that they're feeling tired, depressed, unfulfilled, bored, or they may be over-consuming. So they're going through their life and they're filling the void with over-consumption, which often leads to debt. And I know what it's like to live with debt. It's a huge burden, huge.
Yeah, huge. And I totally agree with what you say about how decluttering can help you downsize, which can then help you reduce your debt. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think of, especially when they're feeling vulnerable and just kind of want to cling to everything that they already know.
I mean, when you downsize, what on the outside, the material possession side of your life, you upsize the internal part of your life. You upsize the time that you have available to actually be free to do the things that you really want to do, because you've cut all of that. And it simply is clutter. Our lives become cluttered with external obligations and things, actual physical things.
And sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Karen. It just exists. It's being able to understand that how we're living and what works. It's so unique and individual, because how some people will relate to having things around them as comforting, other people will find them irritating and a distraction. And I think most people, if they walk into a kind of a clear space, they feel calmer. They feel much more in tune and centered within themselves. If you walk into a room and it's full of to the brim with things I know in myself I feel very fractious and very irritated and very tired.
Yeah, I completely understand what you mean. I'm very, very sensitive to visual clutter and just stuff being in my visual field. It's just very distracting and kind of stressful for me.
Because everything is energy. Every single element of our lives is energy. So for me, it's like a magnet. What you are attracting, what you're having stuck to you, is what you have allowed to come into that boundary, into that space. And for me, it's having an awareness of how energetically draining it can be to have clutter attached to us emotionally and physically.
I think that's so important, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't consider. So how well are people at maintaining the work that they do with you? Do you find that some of your clients need you to revisit them after a certain amount of time, or are they?
Yeah. I think if they're clients who are wanting me to, if they've got a lot of stuff and they want it organised, I think there's a maintenance issue that comes into play there, because unless the whole household is in on the project and they're all maintaining, putting things back in the places where they've been designated to, after a couple of months, you find that things, either volume has been added to that area. So, for example, if it was a shoe cupboard, and there's shoe racks and there's designated places for each member to put their shoes into. If each member of the household is not doing that, or they're suddenly consumed, 6 more pairs of trainers, the maintenance side of that is, again, being accountable to, can we let go of the 3 pairs of trainers that we had 6 months ago? And gradually, I find that clients do start to take on board what consumerism actually is, understand, how much do we really need, and when we are buying things, what reason are we buying them for? What is the feelings behind that? Not the facts, but the feelings behind wanting to acquire things. So I have had a client that in the past has said to me, I'm really ready now to kind of let go. I mean, this is like 3 years on. I'm really ready now to let go of something that I wasn't sure I ever would be able to. So it's a process. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah, definitely. It's not something you can just do once and say, okay, that's done. Taken care of.
No. Yeah, no, absolutely not. It is a process. And, the more people become minimalist, the easier it is. And I think that being minimalist is not saying that you can't have, shoes by the front door in a basket or DVDs next to the TV, but it's understanding how much volume do, minimalism is not about not having anything, but it's just about understanding a level of volume, and that we can move things on, whether we eBay them or we recycle them or we rehome them. You don't have to retain. You can pass them on. It's like an act of generosity. It's like reaching out a hand to somebody and saying, enjoy something that I used to have and that I no longer want, but you'll get something from it.
Yes, I love that. So, Julieanne, what are your top tips for how to declutter your home? If someone's listened to this podcast and they're inspired to take action today, what are, maybe 3 things that they could do?
I would set up a couple of pieces of paper, and you can laminate them with a big Sharpie marker pen. And the first piece of paper, I would write on it, keep it. So this is what you want to keep, and this is what you want to retain. So that's kind of like your first heading. The second one is recycle. So you know that you're definitely going to recycle this. So you've got a big heading on a big piece of paper. And if you laminate these cards, you just bring them out each time you go through the process. The third heading will be reassess. So you're not quite sure. You know that you're not going to use it now, but you're going to come back to this at a later date. So it could be that you decide to vacuum pack some clothes when you're changing seasons in your wardrobe, and you're not sure that you're really going to wear this stuff, but you're not quite ready to let go. But it's sort of in a reassess pile. So having these headings, when you come, for example, to maybe go through all your DVDs and your CDs, you know that this pile here, I'm going to keep these. I love these, and I'm going to keep them. The next pile, you're not sure, you're going to reassess them, you're going to put them somewhere, and if you haven't come back to them in 6 months' time, you know that you haven't missed them. And then you've got a pile of stuff in your recycle pile that you're going to take to the charity shop, or maybe they're of value, you're going to eBay them, so you're going to turn some clutter into cash. So by having these headings, each time you go to either, pull out your underwear drawer, you go through the same process. I'm loving these knickers, I'm going to keep them. I don't want these, I'm going to recycle them. These I'm not sure about, I'm going to pack them away. It's that process. And regularly, I think the right action is about regularly going through once a month, at least, having that regular kind of small little window in your diary where you're going to, it hasn't got to be, you have a whole day free. I find that if you've got 15 minutes there, you can set a timer for 15 minutes, but you can find somewhere in the home where you can unclutter something that only takes you 15 minutes.
Oh, I love that, because that's so manageable. Everyone can find 15 minutes once a month.
Yeah. So if it's like your bedside table, you think, okay, it's going to take 15 minutes. I just take everything off, I dust it down, and I just have a quick look about what I'm going to put back on there. Is there a book on there that I'm not reading? You can go back to the bookshelf. Is there some stuff that just hasn't been put away that's all found itself on my bedside table, or your cutlery drawer, or your socks, or just something that takes 15 minutes, because 15 minutes each day, for example, over 7 days, you could achieve a project that you may have thought was unachievable had you thought, oh gosh, I'm not going to start that because I haven't got 3 hours to do that now. But if you did 15 minutes with your timer, it's like a small victory.
Yes, I love that, because it's just breaking it down into bite-sized chunks.
Yeah, and it's doable. It's very doable.
Definitely. Well, I think that helps a lot, because it's so easy to look at. I mean, I have also moved very frequently, so I'm I've trained my mind not to accumulate things, but still, there are places in the house where I could declutter or organize a little bit more. And I think having that concept of 15 minutes a day or once a week or whatever can work for you just makes it so much more manageable.
Mm-hmm. And also with children, a great thing is when they ask for, because they're virtual shoppers now, children, they can go on their iPads, they can go onto Amazon, and they can constantly be browsing the shopping sites. That, if you want to have something, let's have a look at what is in existence at the moment, what's in your bedroom at the moment, and get them to be part of the process. So my youngest daughter now, who's 9, actually puts things outside her door now and says, Mum, that's the rubbish, that's recycling, that I'm going to give to Lucy because I don't use it anymore. So, getting the children on board, because they often do want to replace things with, something else. So you need to let go of, maybe there's some books that the children have outgrown that they could go to the library or go to the spring fair, so that, you don't have that build-up of just adding stuff to stuff, because junk attracts junk. Mm-hmm. So that's a good tip for children.
I think that's really important to also let parents know that children can be taught to declutter, and they can be taught to get to the point where they spontaneously do this on their own, even at the age of 9. I think that's really impressive.
Leading by example, I think if Mum's bedroom, when you open Mum's wardrobe, it looks, you can find what you want to wear that day. You open up your bedside table and, things are organised. And when my children say to me, oh, Mum, where's the strings? Or there was a piece of pink ribbon that I had off of something, I know where everything is, and I can put my finger on it straight away, which reduces so many arguments and so much stress and tension in the house.
Yes.
Because, when there's a deadline or when you're looking for something, and you need it now, like blue tack or sellotape, if there's a designated place, so if you own it, you home it. Simple as that.
I love
in
that.
The house, if you own it, you home it. Everything has a place and everything in its place. And then it just takes out the tension and the chaos at home. And I live on my own with 3 children, so and I'm self-employed. So in order for me to do the work that I do, I have to live like this. It's a testament to the work that I do.
Definitely. So, Julieanne, do you have any women business mentors? Are there any women in business who inspire you?
Corrina Barnes inspires me from You Inspire Me. A lady called Linda Anderson, who I used to receive EFTs from. She's a very inspiring lady, having slightly different generation to me, and has gone through raising children and running a home. I think she's quite remarkable with what she does. I used to follow a blog post from Gretchen Rubin, which was the Happiness Project. Her kind of take on life inspired me 3 or 4 years ago, actually reading some of her blog posts. Yeah, I can't think of anybody else. There's a gentleman, there's a man who is inspiring as a mentor, and he's called Leo Babuata from the Zen Habits. His work and his teachings and blogs are fantastic.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. So, Julieanne, how can other women in business who might be listening to this podcast benefit from working with you?
Other women in business benefit from working
how would you recommend that they contact you or get started, thinking about working with you to declutter?
Log on to my website, which is www.unclutteryourlife.co.uk. There's weekly blog posts on there, so maybe kind of connecting with one of those blog posts, whether that's regarding emotional or practical clutter, and they can contact me for a free 30-minute telephone consultation. And I think having a kind of a browse through what I do, which is on my About Me page and what I do page, is got a very small YouTube clip on my website which introduces me, so people want to see, me and kind of how I talk and how I look and how I feel. It's only a couple of minutes. I think it's about 2 or 3 minutes. That's also on my website.
Okay, excellent.
All
right, sounds good. Yeah, I think the free 30-minute consultation is a great place to start. And also your blog has so many practical tips and concepts and things that people can already start applying to their lives.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us today. I think this is just a massive wealth of information, and I think we cannot underestimate the shifts that will happen as a result of decluttering. I know for some people who aren't familiar with the concept, they can just see it as just, I'll just make my home and my life a bit more organized, but really the emotional shifts and the life changes that result from that are just so powerful. It's just amazing.
They are, and I'm glad you've got that, because I think it takes, by talking about it and relating to something in your home, to kind of get you into the kind of energy shift mode. When you start thinking, shoe cupboard, wardrobe, cutlery drawer, bedside table, DVDs, loft space, garage space, it kind of gets you thinking, I probably have got stuff there that, once I get rid of that, I'll let go of that. I'm really freeing up something here. So, really glad that you've got the kind of real depth of it. Yeah,
that's great. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit sociallyholistic.com/SHP52 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Socially Holistic Podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. Please help us help more women in business by giving us a 5-star review of this podcast. The more women who find out about this podcast, the more successful businesses there will be. So please leave a 5-star review today over at iTunes. Thank you.